A boxing betting expert.
I know, David.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
He really gets into the nitty-gritty of this whole thing.
Gary, good to see you.
Good to see you, Dave.
So we go back 25 years. So this is going to be fun to go through some of the old memories and some of the new ones. Over those 25 years, I've always considered you one of the shrewdest judges in boxing. A part of our sort of friendship has been fundamentally around boxing. So 25 years of sharing predictions, getting some right, getting some wrong. So
exactly, yeah.
And I think some of the sort of methodologies we have are similar as well. So let's get into it. So what was your first boxing memory, the first fight you remember?
I mean, it's topical in a way because that jungle thing's just finished. But as a kid, I do remember tuning in to watch Barry McGuigan against Steve Cruz. I don't know if you remember that fight.
Yeah, no.
And it took place in Vegas, and it was like a boiling hot sort of early evening. And I remember watching that with my dad. And obviously, I think at the time it was like Ring Magazine's one of their best fights of the year. But I just remember being, quite frankly, just baffled that he lost, because he was trumpeted as, it was almost a formality. I think Cruz had been sort of brought in because the original opposition had been injured. So it was one of those ones you just waiting and watching for it to unfold and McGuigan to win. But it didn't pan out like that. So
was that the outdoor crazy hot?
That's the one. Yeah, it's in a car park at Caesar's Palace. Temperatures were like well over 100 degrees. Probably not ideal for an Irishman.
Right. So how old were you then?
I think I would have been about 10 or something. Yeah. I mean, my dad was always he was quite a big Larry Holmes fan. So it's hard to cast your mind back now, isn't it? As to when you used to get like the recordings of the show from the previous night. I know you'll remember like waking up on a Sunday and tuning into the latest exploits of Mike Tyson. So is that sort of era really where I sort of started to get into boxing.
So that's interesting that your father. So most people I talk to, if it's their father of that era, it's Ali, but your father was Larry Holmes.
Yeah, he was very much a Holmes man. Yeah, he just felt that he was more of like a complete package than Ali.
Yeah.
So I think. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying my dad was like an expert on boxing, but I think he appreciated the showmanship of Ali. But I think Holmes just had that long reign, and he had quite a few. He came through quite a few tough battles where he got off the canvas, and I think he had a pretty solid heavyweight career, which I mean, you can talk about if he's considered one of the greats of all time. But he had a pretty good career. I mean, when you think he came back without any training and got obliterated by a prime Mike Tyson, I think maybe that takes a bit of the luster off of him, really. I think had he not had that fight, people tend to remember that fight, but they don't actually realise that he was way past it at that time. I think he was like 37 and just pretty much went straight into it on the back of not much training. Probably got a call from Don King. He was offered a fair bit of money, and away he went. So
absolutely, and that's like for our generation, that's kind of our first experience of Larry Holmes, and it takes sort of a little bit. You have to get a bit older and get into it, and then look back at him, and then I think Larry Holmes is someone that our generation comes to respect quite late in your boxing sort of journey, sort of thing, because of that Tyson thing, and because everyone before us talked about Ali rather than Holmes.
Yeah, and even when you think about, everyone always dismisses his win, rightly so, given the condition of Ali, but he didn't really have much of a chance in people's eyes, did he? So I know he's moaned about that, but there's probably a grain of truth, isn't there? I think so.
So your father was a Larry Holmes. Did he ever box? Have you ever boxed? Is there any sort of actual boxing in the family?
No boxing in my family, no. So obviously just very much into sport, really. So it kind of goes hand in hand, doesn't it? A few of my mates, were members of boxing clubs, but I must admit I was never tempted to get into it myself. But Frank Bruno used to live just around the corner where I was at school.
Oh right.
So quite a few kids at school used to try to sort of knock on his house, a place called Emerson Park, just around the corner from where I live now.
Right.
And you sometimes see him going for like a jog in his early morning in his well, really old-fashioned now, like the old sort of jogging bottoms and things like
Yeah,
that we used to
three
wear.
three sizes too small, bright blue. You can picture it. Yeah,
Exactly, yeah. It used to have normally have like a hat on, so you
yeah,
couldn't really see who it was, but just by its sheer size,
yeah. Right.
and there wasn't that many black guys jogging around the area at that sort of time. So
Brilliant. So, okay. So, how do you think about the argument that if you haven't boxed, you can't judge the fight? So, I think a lot of people are brilliant assessors of fighters, of fighting, of boxing, predicting results, and they don't have to have been in the ring themselves.
mm.
Do you have an opinion about that?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? I think it's just one of it's like as a sport, it's one that it's just so everyone's got an opinion. It's one or the other, isn't it? So I don't think in a way there's a complexity that sometimes if you think about football, there's various different formations and things
Yeah,
like that. I mean, nowadays you get women's football talking about they're playing a high press and things. You think, are they really playing a high press? We've
right.
all watched women's football, but for me, I just think boxing, you can break it down into different areas, like the size of the guy, the speed of the guy, the reach. You look at the physicality, and we've spoken a lot about when a fighter peaks. Some fighters are getting worse, and other fighters are
Yeah,
improving.
yeah,
There's a lot of that around the heavyweight scene at the moment. So I think, yeah, there's lots of factors, and you just try and weigh it up the best you can. And like you say, sometimes you'll be right, and other times you'll get it wrong. But yeah, hopefully just try and get it right more than you get it wrong. And I think for me, it's not just there's an opinion, but then obviously we like to try and back up that opinion with a bet on it. So there's that other thing about looking at value.
yeah,
So a prime example for me was like AJ against Daniel Dubois. We backed Dubois, and there was every chance he would have lost that fight, and I still probably would have said it was a good bet,
of course.
just because the value in
Yeah,
it just wasn't there. And
yeah,
to my mind, Joshua shouldn't have been that price against him, coming off the back of a pretty ordinary 4 fights.
yeah.
Since he got actually beat twice by Usyk. So
That's it. That's it. If and whether it was a pure 50-50 or not, who knows? But if you feel that is more like a 50-50 fight, and you've got a 4-1 outsider in Dubois, that's the decision made.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, whether or not it might not win, but it should
Exactly.
still stand by that position.
What's I think that's coming into the whole the area of you and me coming from that sort of betting background. Is like, for me, all the work, all the effort, all the stress is done before the first bell when it comes to picking a bet. As soon as I've
mm,
got my bet on, I was like, all right, now what happens is out of my control. I've made the decision on the basis that I know I might lose this bet. Doesn't matter. Like the
yeah,
result,
yeah,
obviously you want to win, but I'm not. If Sunday morning I wake up and it's a loss, I'm like, that's okay. I knew that yesterday. I knew that this bet might not win. So you
exactly. Yeah,
and so sometimes I go pretty strong on opinion, and I'm like, yeah, this is absolutely a maximum bet for me. But I'm aware that I might be wrong.
yeah, exactly.
So,
So
and I think the other point you made just on the timing of fight. One fight is on the way up and one's on the way down. I think that is different from other sports as well, because in boxing, because it's an individual sport, the name carries a lot of clout for the pay-per-view sales, the ticket sales, and if you can get someone on their way down, I think a classic example was Marco Antonio Barrera against Amir Khan, and
mm,
that was a complete crossroads fight. Khan was on the way up, Barrera was retired, but it feels like it's a great fight, and it'll be a hell of a win for Khan, but it's not that.
yeah,
It's a myth that it's a close fight, because Barrera is not what he was. And
yeah.
there's loads of examples in boxing like that.
Definitely, and lots of examples when you think about. Yeah, I mean, I know I could beat on about him all day, but like AJ, like when you read about when he had his first fight against Vladimir Klitschko,
Yeah,
uh, Barry Hearn, that they thought that he was finished, Klitschko,
mm.
but he very nearly won that fight,
Yeah, exactly.
but they thought it was a good name to put on
Yeah,
on his CV, but you actually wouldn't be too much trouble.
yeah,
He turned out to be obviously a lot more trouble than they
yeah,
were actually thought would be the case. So
and that was a great example because AJ came out of that fight because it was so exciting. The promotion viewpoint was what a great fight, how exciting, isn't AJ a warrior? Whereas the real interpretation was like, oh my god, AJ nearly lost to a 40-year-old.
yeah, he should have lost to him. I mean, I don't know if you heard one of the Klitschko brothers. They said that they basically didn't go for the knockout because they just thought that AJ wouldn't recover and he was probably going to flag in the latter stages of the rounds because he's such a big guy.
Right.
And obviously that didn't happen. But then again, obviously at the time he was like what 24 or something like that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
So they made a misjudgment, but. Who
Wow.
knows? Who knows what age? I mean, we see AJ now, and then he's quite patiently seems to struggle even after a few rounds. I mean, I don't know what you think about these boxers, and you think what cardio are they actually doing to really get them in that position where they can withstand like a few rounds, but all too often they're gassing after several rounds. So.
Absolutely, I think that's a really valid point for what's happening in a couple of weeks' time as well. So, right. So, who's your favorite boxer to watch, either now or historically?
I think historically, I was like, I mean, I suppose growing up, it was a big. We had that great middleweight era, didn't we? So I don't know what camp you were in. I mean, it's slightly before our time when we met, but I was probably a Nigel Benn fan, ahead of Eubank. So I used to like his sort of his all action style. His fights were never boring. So I think I'm a big fan of Ben in terms of back in the day. It's hard to actually think who's my favourite fighter at the moment. I mean, I've enjoyed watching a few of his fights, not because he's my favourite fighter, just because the pantomime around it, and I mean his battles with Wilder were always be remembered for quite a good few reasons. Like each fight varied. There's a lot of drama each fight, so I wouldn't say he's the best boxer to watch, but I think his fights are always fairly entertaining. So obviously looking forward to the rematch on December the 21st as well. I mean Usyk's been great as well. The way he unified the cruiserweight division and every test he's been presented with, from Bellew, and Chisora, everyone he's just picked off and he's got better with each one. I think the more he's got used to fighting bigger guys, the better you've actually seen him. So,
exactly. Even though he's hitting that 38 in the new year, he's on the right trajectory, and it's hard to make a case that Fury's in the right trajectory.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's one of those 38-year-olds that is still going to be in good shape, isn't he? I don't see him even in like 5 years' time. He's probably not going to be one of those boxers that you look at them and you think, God, he's piled on a pound since his career.
Yeah, exactly.
He looks after himself. He's got a young body for his age,
Great.
So, like I say, whereas Fury is definitely going the other way around.
Yeah. So we talked about So I was more of a Eubank guy back then, but we talked about the middleweights, the super middleweights, the heavyweights. Do you have a favorite weight division, or is it?
Yeah, I think it is the heavyweights now. I mean, I'll still keep a little bit of an eye on the other weights, like the middle and that, but. Even from a betting perspective, I quite like heavyweights because you've actually got a variable of a knockout, whereas too often in the other weights you're trying to find who wins on points, and the knockout is quite often taken out as a variable. So I think it's quite actually good to go into a fight or betting on a fight and know that this isn't going to go the full rounds. I mean, when you think. Just think about ahead of today. I was thinking about some fights recently, but you think about like the Zhang and Joyce fights. There's no way those fights are going to go the full 12 rounds. So it's just good to sit back and you're going to get a result because no one really likes to win on points, do they?
So with your betting then, do you tend to pick method of victory, outright winner? Do you go into like round betting?
I don't think I'd go into for round betting. Maybe only if I was looking at it for like recreational. Like probably if you think about the undercard, some of those undercards are pretty coming up on December the 21st. Some of those those bouts are pretty sort of heavily odds on one side. So
Yeah.
that'd be one there. I might think, could there be some value here in the knockout, in the early rounds? But other than that, I think more so, like you say, sometimes you can make a case for a points victory, but otherwise it's quite good to go for the knockout. I mean, if you think about the Usyk fight against AJ, the first one, I mean that went to the judges. But had there been another round or another minute in that final round, it probably wouldn't have gone to the judges.
Exactly.
So I think I went for the knockout there, and I was a bit frustrated because I was thinking just a little bit longer would have been in Clover. But I think then then there comes an argument that you're better off covering both of those sides.
Yeah.
So
that one. You probably needed another minute in that fight. And,
yeah.
do you remember? Like I remember back probably 20 years ago, there was a market called handicap betting where when you talk about these big favourites where it was a 5 to 6 each of 2 market, and it was the favourite to win in 6 rounds or any other result.
Yeah,
and I love that. I love that for a way of getting against a short price favourite who's going to struggle and not put the guy away. So I mean, like it was when Tyson was fighting, even at the end of his career, like Tyson v McBride might have been Mike Tyson to win in the first 4 rounds, 5 to 6, everything else 5 to 6. And it's a great way of just turning a very one-sided event into a 50-50.
Yeah, exactly.
I want them to bring that back because like these undercard things, I'll be like, there's so many times where I'm like, I don't want to back the favourite at 1.05, but I might take him to win in the first 5 rounds or back the underdog to get out in the first 5.
Yeah, what's that Australian guy? I think it was called Jai. I think I had that bet in that. Yeah, I think I had him to bang out his opponent in the previous first 5 rounds or something. I think he actually did it in the last round of the band I had. So it was, but it made an otherwise quite a boring fight one that was worth watching.
Absolutely.
So but other than that, I wouldn't probably go for round betting. It's probably I don't know. Yeah, a bit pot luck job, isn't it?
Agree. And so in the sport of boxing, obviously there's always controversies. But what would be if you could change one rule? What would you change?
I mean, I think I was going to say it's not going to happen, but sometimes I wish that they could go back to 15 rounds. Be good to have those. Go. Imagine some of these fights where some of them do seem to end a bit prematurely. You think we could have done with a few more rounds there, but
it's a good one.
Of safety grounds, it probably not going to happen now. But
that's interesting. That makes me think because I think I totally agree. But the flip side is sometimes you see a 12 rounder that's absolutely brutal, and you worry about those extra rounds would do.
Probably the extra few rounds what they'd actually do. I mean, it was Derek Chisora's last fight. Was against Joe Joyce, wasn't it?
Was it?
I think the Copper Box. I'm not sure if you remember watching that, but that was like a pretty brutal 12 rounds between 2 fighters that didn't look particularly fit.
That's right. Yeah.
And by the end, you'd actually would have said that 12 rounds was enough. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even the British heavyweight title at the start of the year, Wardley and Fraser Clark was another one where I was just like, whoa. This is damaging stuff. Okay, so what's been your you go back as long as you want for this one, like the best hot take you've had where you've picked a fight? I know you've had some good ones, but where you've picked a fight against the odds or even if it was odds on and you just thought it was an absolute certainty. What's the best sort of hot take you've had?
I mean I don't like tend to like bet massively odds on in boxing. Like I say, I try to, like you say, but go for a fight if it's pick 'em and try and sort of get, or like you say, just try and get more value. So I think just opposing AJ, and even when Fury beat Wilder the second time round, it was more so actually that bet was more in running. It was one where obviously you had him. I know you talked about it beforehand, but you had him switching, almost going for this, this very much a defensive style where he was just trying to avoid getting punched, and then he went with a Kronk style. And then when you're watching it on TV, I remember just thinking like the layers, the bookies they were just too slow to react. So I think I backed him in the first round, but then, or just before the fight, but then the odds were pretty much the same after like
Yeah.
2 or 3 rounds. So then I just thought, I've got to tuck in again here, and
Brilliant.
and then obviously then it turned out to be a sort of a pretty one-sided beating. So
Great.
that's one of those ones that sticks out for me definitely. Where I sort of I was watching it and I just thought, I've got to press the button now before they actually change their minds. So
That's a great one. So it's not just the analysis before the fight; it's what you're seeing during the first few minutes that makes you make that call.
yeah, definitely. I mean, and you think about Big Bang Zhang against Joyce. I mean, that was another one where the bookies just didn't seem to have it right. I think they had this. I know Joyce had this reputation of
Yeah.
being able to withstand any punishment. He just keeps on coming and coming. But if you're getting hit by Zhang's a pretty big lump, and if he's hitting you with a few jabs, and he's gonna make you stop you in the tracks a bit. So
Yeah. And yeah. And I remember on the AJ thing, I think that's one thing that we have always discussed and always agreed on, and we've been sort of biding our time to get the right price to oppose him throughout the years.
Yeah, exactly.
What about when have you just got it just incredibly wrong, where you just thought you knew something was going to happen? And so my classic for this is I thought David Hayward beat Tony Bellew both times, and both times I was convinced, and both times I was totally wrong. So what are your absolute shockers where you've got it wrong?
To be honest, I can't think of any where I've absolutely had an absolute shocker, honestly. Well, I mean, I know I got Usyk wrong, the first one, because I was just thinking that Fury, I thought he was going to be too big for him, and I just thought like the way he's quite well, he used to be, he used to be quite good at keeping guys at range.
Yeah.
Like when he used to fight Wilder, he was quite often sizing himself up and managed to keep Wilder at distance, so Wilder couldn't actually get maybe close enough to to swing like he wanted to. Different type of fighter, but that's one where obviously it didn't pan out that way. So so I definitely got that one wrong.
Did you? And that was a great one in terms of the in play value. Did you early doors? You must have thought got this wrong. Midway through the fight, you must have thought, hold on, I got this one right, and then back again.
Well, that's it. I think midway through the fight, you're thinking, well, Fury is on top, and it's looking that way. Then he was just going to go to a fairly convincing victory and outpointing him. So that's what we're trying. We're trying to mull over now, aren't we? As to what as both fighters learned from that first fight. I don't know if you listened to the the gloves off Sky interview. I know Usyk said this time it's going to be a different fight. I mean, there's a danger you almost took yourself into like having a bet based on what they say. But it's interesting when you think to yourself like, I wonder if Usyk this time around it would be a bit more busy in the opening rounds.
Yeah.
Whereas at the start, historically, everyone says he's a bit of a slow starter.
Yeah.
He likes to sort of kind of like feel out the fighter. Whereas this time he's had a whole bout with Fury, and I don't think Usyk's had. I mean, obviously he had the rematch with AJ. Did AJ box a bit better in the second one? Probably slightly, but to my mind, he still lost. But I don't think. I mean, and Usyk was a better fighter than him anyway. But this one round, it's interesting to think. What I'd actually quite like is Usyk to come out busier. First couple of rounds, put it on Fury, and then the likelihood is that Fury is going to be feeling the pace much earlier than what he did last time.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really good point, and I might actually go and watch the second Usyk Joshua fight after this because I want to see did Usyk start quicker because he's done those 12 rounds with him already.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And okay, so who is the most overrated boxer? Either don't say AJ again, but either active or historically.
Yeah, I mean, like say AJ is the obvious option, isn't he? It's a tricky one. Yeah. I mean, I used to think Nassim Hamed was overrated, but then when you look back, he did have a. I was kind of reviewing his career like a couple of weeks ago, and I was thinking he did actually have a couple of decent fights, but
Yeah.
obviously he wasn't the all-time great that he was being painted as.
No.
But yeah, everyone used to obviously. There's a large amount of clamour around him, but
Yeah.
I think with the benefit of hindsight, you look back and you think he wasn't
Yeah.
wasn't an all-time great.
No.
So yeah, that would be one that sticks
Yeah.
to mind.
Agree.
Have you got any other names where you think that they're like massively overrated?
I think no. I mean, Hammett is absolutely the poster boy for that. I also, you know, it's too easy to say it, but Mike Tyson. But I was the biggest Mike Tyson fan as a kid. But I think Nassim Hammett and Mike Tyson are very similar in that the highlight reels are spectacular. If you pull up
Yeah,
5 minutes of each of them, you're gonna have a good time. But both times they faced adversity, they struggled. Yeah, Hammett got off the canvas a couple of times in New York and all these ones to win. But his biggest challenge was against Barrera, and he didn't want it. You know, he was 20 minutes delayed coming out to the ring. Even
yeah, yeah.
when they really faced adversity, there were questions there. So it's those.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, what about, here's a controversial one. What about if I said to you that if you look at Muhammad Ali's record, you could pick quite a few holes in that. Like
wow.
Rumble in the Jungle and the Liston bouts, incredible. But then after that, you could say that the 70s era, he got a few decisions based on his reputation.
Oh wow.
You know,
That's
how's that for a starter?
that's a hot take, right? I'm gonna clip this bit and send it to a few people.
You have to really properly delve into it and look at like the Norton fight, and there's another one. Well, obviously, yeah, the Leon Spinks one,
Yeah, right. Okay.
and you have to look at those. I'm not talking about when when he was literally properly gone completely against
Yeah, yeah,
Holmes, but those other ones when he was supposedly still like competitive, and he gets a couple of results, and you think, would that have happened if it wasn't Muhammad Ali? I don't
interesting.
know. I don't know if that tarnishes your legacy. I don't think
Okay.
it does, but I'm just saying that if we're going to really criticise a
Yeah,
fighter's record,
yeah,
but because it's Ali, people just tend to gloss over that and
yeah.
don't tend to focus on that. So
No, fair one.
I think that's an interesting point.
It's
If you look
very
at,
interesting. It's a very interesting point because I've literally never heard anyone say it, and I'm going to do a deep dive into that afterwards as well.
yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to be dismissed as saying something
No,
absolutely outlandish, and
no, no. It's
But
good.
yeah, no, it's an interesting thing. And
Yeah,
if you looked at his career after the Rumble in the Jungle, there's ups and downs.
yeah,
If you read about it at the time, he was like, I don't think he abused himself in terms of alcohol and stuff, but his private life was pretty chaotic.
right,
And you
right.
think, like, did that have an impact on how he was preparing for these fights and things?
Okay, so
Possibly.
then if who'd you put as the best heavyweight of all time then?
I mean, it's hard, isn't it? Because we weren't around at the time. People like Joe Lewis and people like that.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's one of those arguments you can never really say, can you? But yeah, I think just because he's universally regarded as the greatest, right?
yeah,
So I still think it's hard for me to say that Muhammad Ali isn't the top heavyweight of all time.
yeah.
It's interesting when you think people talk about fantasy matches. Like, I wonder how you get on now if you could transport Muhammad Ali to the modern era. Just because of his size, maybe it probably might be quite tough for him to have the same sort of impact. I don't know.
I think he'd be all right. I really do. I think
Mm,
I think the small, you know, I think the small heavyweight thing is a myth. Mike Tyson did okay at 5'11". I think Usyk
yeah,
6'3". Usyk. There was a photo with Usyk standing next to Lennox Lewis the other day. And I know Lennox Lewis is now old and probably a little bit shorter than he was, but they look the same size, And
yeah, and I've stood next to Lennox Lewis, and he's a pretty
yeah,
big lump. I mean, equally like the likes of, like, well, Frank. If I think about, I've seen Frank Bruno, and Frank Bruno is bigger than me, and I'm 6'2".
yeah,
So yeah, I agree. And also you have to factor in different conditioning now, and
yeah,
Ali wouldn't be training the way that he trained back then anyway.
yeah,
So
exactly.
he'd
Yeah.
still probably be able to be competitive.
But like you say, it's so much of a hypothetical. I actually think Lennox Lewis is worthy of a mention at the top spot as well.
Yeah, I think
Someone,
you're right.
um, so where would you put Mike Tyson in that all-time list?
I think probably like five, something
Yeah,
like that, maybe. Yeah, because like you say, I think I would. It's not just based on their fight, but I think you'd have to rate Lewis above him,
yeah, so
given what he was doing, and
yeah,
then like you say, Holmes comes above him.
yeah,
We tend to forget Rocky Marciano, don't we? Because he's so long ago.
yeah.
And
And
I
he
mean, I don't,
genuinely was a small heavyweight.
he was,
Yeah,
yeah. What was he like? 14. I think he had
yeah,
like 14-10 or something like that, and he
yeah.
was.
Five
And he,
5'10" or something, 5'9".
yeah, but apparently he was like an absolute wrecking ball.
Right. Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, you can probably try and look at footage of him, but it'd be pretty grainy, I dare
yeah.
say. So
Exactly. And
yeah,
okay, so you've met Lennox, you met Frank.
yeah.
What's it like? What
And
photograph? Quick chat or?
I was in the Daily Mirror when it was when I was actually at a West Ham game when it was just before he fought Bruno.
All
And
right.
do you remember when at the time Lennox was making a big thing about trying to sort of come across as like an Englishman, wasn't he?
Of
So
course. Yeah.
he got paraded before the pitch.
Loving his West Ham soccer team.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. He got paraded before the pitch. He had like the West Ham scarf, and luckily enough, I had like tickets at the time. Used to get them just behind the away box, literally the manager's sort of seating. So yeah, he sort of had a chat after and got him to sign on the program.
Right.
And then yeah, then the next day, like someone said to me, like, "Have you seen the Daily Mirror?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And there's a picture of Lennox with his with his program, and I was just like standing next to him whilst he signed it.
Brilliant. Oh,
So yeah,
nice.
so actually seemed quite a nice guy. I mean,
Yeah, I'm
he
sure.
seems quite a nice. He was actually being very pleasant to everyone,
Yeah,
signing autographs. I
yeah.
remember someone saying, "What are your chances against Bruno?" And he wasn't arrogant. He just said, "Look, don't worry." He said, "I'm taking care of Bruno, no
Oh,
problem."
wow. That's amazing.
So
Yeah.
that was pretty good. Yeah.
20 years ago.
Um,
I remember that fight very well.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know if you've had a look on the undercard for the Usyk one. The Romford Bull. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, who's that? That's
Yeah.
what's his
Is he
name?
is he I'm forgetting myself now, Romford
Yeah.
Bull. But yeah, he lives near me. I've seen him out and about a few times.
Oh, okay. Who we got here? Oh yeah, Johnny Fisher.
Just Johnny Fisher, yeah, I
He's
forgot his name.
nice. Yeah, he said he's playing. He's like playing Stoke on a cold Wednesday evening or something.
Mm,
That's his quote.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But probably my best story, Dave, in terms of knowing or having interaction with someone. I only realised this a few years ago. Is I used to work with Eddie Hearn for a very short period of time.
Right.
So when he was basically like a school kid, he's actually a school year younger than me. And so when I was like at university or sixth and college, I got a job in a double glazing salesman role. So in Romford, it was in a like an industrial park, and what we basically had to do is just trawl through the phone book, phoning up people and just saying that we're going to be in your area for the next couple of days. Would you like someone to come and give you like a quote on replacement windows? And I'd kind of forgotten about this. And then a couple of years ago, I was reading something, and Eddie Hearn it was like an article bigging himself up basically, which doesn't surprise you. And he was saying that how he'd sort of, when he was a young kid, he had a job at this place called Weathersill Windows, and it was basically Barry Hearn had given him the job or got the job for him. And he was sent there on his summer holidays just to sort of, I suppose it gives him a bit of an insight as to how the real world works.
Yeah, right.
And and he said so when he said his name, and I thought to myself, like, I do remember an Eddie working there,
That's so.
and he used to sit at the back. It was like almost like the cool kids at school. Like he used to sit at the back with a couple of his other lads, and they were all really full of themselves. And it's quite hard now to actually envisage him sitting at the back,
That's so
laughing and joking. But to be
funny.
honest, he was. I don't want to speak ill of him, but he was like you could tell he really loved himself. Yeah.
Wow,
So
brilliant. Well,
it's,
how old are you then?
we were about 18, 19, something like that.
Brilliant.
So It didn't. Just did it for like a month or so. You know, when you're
Yeah,
your
yeah,
summer holidays, yeah, earn a
love
few
it.
quid, and yeah. So he used to turn up of an evening, and he'd be sort of doing the shift. It's like from
It's
something
hilarious.
like from 6 to 9 o'clock or something.
I think I've
So
heard him mention that thing that like, yeah, keep me grounded. I did this. It wasn't always straightforward. Yeah.
exactly it. Yeah. So that's his story that he's
It's
actually
like
had.
there was this teacher's pet at the front called Gary, and like I don't know
Yeah.
what's happening. What?
I actually remember just sitting there. I remember him taking, not necessarily really me, but he was always like taking the mick, him and some other lad taking the mickey out of other people. And I just used to just think, you know, he's a bit of a knob and just used to ignore him.
That's
But
so funny. The
I
thing
think,
is, like, I quite like him. He's pretty funny. Some of the stuff he puts out on Twitter and X is he's pretty funny. He gives as good as he gets. Like I respect him for that.
oh, he
Uh,
does, yeah, yeah. I mean, I was some interview the other day, and I was just listening to that on YouTube or something, and he was saying that he
yeah.
thinks he's going to be recognised as the greatest promoter of all time in any sport. He was like, not just boxing, any sport.
Wow. He said that
Uh,
recently, has he?
he
Just as
said
he's
that
getting
recently, yeah,
all his fighters are getting beaten, and he's suddenly starting to panic a bit.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
exactly.
what about? That's brilliant. Love that. Okay. What about what's the best upset or the most surprising result you can remember seeing where you've jumped out of your seat thinking no one saw that coming?
Well, I mean, I'd probably say Nigel Benn against Joel McClellan, to be
Yeah,
honest with
right.
you.
Yeah,
I know that fight is like tarnished a bit now, with modern eyes, and people say. I read something the other day. Someone said, it's such a good fight, but I haven't watched it since.
yeah.
I mean, I've watched it since a few
Mm,
times, and I still think it's an interesting fight.
yeah,
But that was one where, yeah, no one expected him to beat Joe McClellan. If
yeah,
you watch the build up, and you look at his record, he was banging out all these people in the first
yeah,
couple of rounds.
yeah,
Like Nigel Benn said, he was like mini Mike Tyson. It was
yeah,
a formality
yeah,
because what they wanted to do is basically take the title off Nigel Benn, and then Don King could just match Gerald McClellan with probably some of his other fighters who
right.
he had in his stable at the time.
Yeah,
And obviously it didn't work out like that.
yeah.
I think that fight then just took such a toll on Ben. He probably
Yeah.
wasn't the same fighter after that. But yeah.
It's weird how with whenever they had documentaries about that, they'd never show clips of it. You could never find it, and now like 20 years later, now when they show documentaries, they just show the fight. They can the sort of
Yeah, yeah, they tried to.
sensibilities have eroded because the time has passed.
It's made it okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, one thing is interesting is actually if you look at that fight, if you watch the US version and
right.
the Reg Guttridge version,
Yeah,
the commentary is very different. It's like
yeah,
one of them is very much like pro-American and almost
yeah,
like if you look at how that like the referee is almost like not doing his job properly, it's a
yeah,
joke,
yeah.
whereas the ITV perspective is a bit different. It's
They
quite
sort
interesting, that
of,
concept.
they're accusing you of a little bit of a quit, aren't they?
Yeah,
Clean.
yeah.
Yeah.
He
That was
basically quit.
it's so tough because in the heat of the moment, how do you're commentating on something you've never seen before, and
Well,
it's unusual.
it's also like if you think is that Ferdy Paccio? I think he was
Yeah,
Ali's he was on
yeah,
Ali's team. He commentates on it, and then after the fight, I was going to watch it a few weeks ago. He's actually saying he's saying to Nigel Benn, uh, McClellan's quit. Basically, none of your punches actually look like they were really
right,
hurting him anyway. But
right,
and I look back and I think, how do you know anyway?
yeah, right,
Because you you weren't a boxer.
yes, yeah,
So, but it's going around to your point about do you need to be a boxer or an ex-boxer to find value or assess a
yeah,
fight? Probably not. But I think you need to you need to be looking at how things develop and what are the signs from people. I know you look at you've said before about the signs like do people even look confident when they're walking into
oh
the
yeah,
ring?
mm,
It can tell you and think, yeah, this guy's actually really up for it or it's not.
oh, yeah. I
I
love
mean,
that stuff.
when you think about the Daniel Dubois and AJ fight, I mean, everyone was saying it's too much. It's probably going to be too much for him. He's fighting in front of, for Daniel, he's fighting in front of like 90,000 people, biggest ever show at Wembley. He's just going to crumble under the pressure.
Mm,
Everyone was expecting that, and I was just thinking to myself, I don't really see it.
nice.
You
You
know,
so when you backed Fury during the Wilder fight because of what you saw in the first couple of minutes, I was backing Dubois during the ring entrances. I was listening to all the music and watching the body language. I was like, I'm still back into what he looks. I like what I see here.
Yeah,
I want to have. He's still 4-1. There was sort of Tyson-esque vibes about his ring entrance. You know, the black towel, the no messing around.
definitely.
AJ looked like he looks before the Andy Ruiz fight. I was like, that last time I saw him look like that was against Andy Ruiz. So
Yeah.
and you know, you can't get in someone's head, but I'm happy to like top up my bets when I see those things that, you know, fit the narrative that I've got in my head already.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see if AJ has another fight against a decent fighter. Does he come out with all the bells and whistles, the Rocky music, and
Well, yeah, he will. I mean, I thought he'd tone it down a bit after like 3 defeats or 4 defeats, whatever it is.
there doesn't seem to be any sign of that happening, does there?
Not really. And what's his catchphrase? No, stay humble.
Stay humble, yeah.
Yeah.
Although it could be replaced now with we rolled the dice, didn't we?
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think, and one thing I was thinking about as well, when you're saying about betting angles, I don't know if it depends if there's the evidence that actually backs it up. But I think people they attach too much importance to a new boxing trainer sometimes. It's
Ooh,
like Ben Davison was going to be working with AJ. He's turned things around. He's gonna be doing this, and he's a lot more fluid with his movements.
yeah, right.
We didn't see any of that at all,
No,
did we?
no.
So I think there's some things like that. I think to myself, well, is that really was he really
Yeah,
going to change his style and
yeah,
suddenly become a different type of fighter
yeah,
when he's what he is? He's like a big unit, you know, and he likes to try to connect with a big punch. And he certainly doesn't throw flurries of punches
yeah,
like, you know, like someone like a Usyk would.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think as he gets more, you know, more aged now, he's only going to become probably even more
yeah,
one-dimensional. I
yeah.
dare say.
I
Like
agree.
we've,
Yeah, tough time. I mean, obviously not a tough time for him because he's absolutely sorted. But what he does next, he's got to wait for the Usyk Fury match, and then.
yeah, yeah.
But
I
yeah,
mean, I mean, he's clearly got pride as a boxer. He's talked before about, you know, he wanted to have a good legacy
yeah.
and things like that. So he will still be hurting by the fact that
Oh yeah.
he got banged out, and I mean, he didn't get, it wasn't just one punch. I mean,
It was.
he was going down like a
It,
yo-yo,
it
pretty
was
much,
tough.
wasn't
It was tough.
it? Yeah.
Okay, what is the worst piece of sportsmanship you've ever seen in a fight, pre-match, after a fight?
It's a tricky question again, David. I think, I mean, we've seen a few examples recently. Well, I mean, AJ when he got beaten by Usyk when he grabbed the belts. I think that would have to be the standout, wouldn't it?
That was tough. Yeah,
Yeah.
bad look that was.
And
Yeah,
the fact that Usyk didn't really speak English at the time,
yeah,
and he was just like looking puzzled as he
that was
sort of like,
crazy. I mean, that was. I don't think you can have that one because it was hilarious. Like you got
yeah.
to. But
What, genuine bad sportsmanship.
yeah,
Yeah, there has been a few, but I can't. I'm trying to think of who were the bad examples of sportsmanship
yeah, you get a few when they
after the
well, the referee would separate them. They touch because they have a slight headbutt or something, and they touch gloves, and then one of them like throws a sucker punch when they're touching gloves. You get that quite often.
yeah.
Not a
There's a
fan of that.
yeah. There's been a few. I can't think. There's a few the last couple of years where like people have been punching after the ring after the bell's gone for the
Oh
round.
yeah,
Things like that. But
yeah.
yeah.
Do you have a favorite boxing quote?
I wouldn't say so. No. Nothing springs to mind. But
The, the,
yeah.
the one doing the rounds at the moment is Usyk's. Don't be afraid, Tyson. I will not leave you alone. That's pretty.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I'm hoping that he's going to back that up, and like I say, not give him several rounds to settle in. Because
Yeah,
if you give Fury several rounds to settle in,
yeah,
he'll just keep doing that thing, you know, when he sniffs his nose and he
uh,
goes for the jab. That's actually played into his hand. So
yeah.
yeah, what we need is Usyk to come out
Well,
firing.
and also Fury has said so everything Fury says I discount as being either the opposite or not true, or it might be true, it might not be. It's irrelevant. But he did say all he needs to do is less showboating. Okay,
Yeah,
but I don't think that's true because when he showboated in the first fight, Usyk was sensible enough and calm enough just to step away. He literally
did,
he literally stepped away. And like Fury is doing that to get a breather. He's like, right, if I start doing some showboating, Usyk's going to back off. I get 10 seconds.
I agree.
rest.
Yeah.
So that showboating is not spontaneous. It's
He just does that, doesn't he? Like,
yeah, and he gets a little bit of a breather. So I want to see the first time he does that, does Usyk actually move in rather than take a step back? Because it was a strategy.
And also, and on that interview, the Sky thing, Fury, when he said that, I won't leave you alone. Fury said, "What do you mean by that? Like, I know you're not going to leave me alone."
Yeah.
But he actually knows what the real meaning of that is.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
So, and he was like, "I don't really understand what that means," but that actually showed that he's actually a little bit rattled in a way.
I thought so too. Yeah.
So
It was great. And
I think it's bubbling up nicely. I think the first fight, I think you might have said that at the time. It kind of like crept up on us. If anything, I feel like as if the build-up's sort of quite, bubbling up quite nicely for this one.
Yeah.
Probably because it was such a good fight, the first one. We know now what we're dealing with. Whereas before, I think probably people were still probably thinking that Fury could boss this one. It actually might not be that good a fight.
Right.
But I think this time people know that it's. I mean, I don't know about you. Can you, if you think about Usyk's record, can you see Fury knocking him out? I know you might. I know you discussed it a little bit with that Johnny guy on your other podcast, but he did connect. I know. I mean, Usyk's maybe got the weakness with his body shots. I'm not sure how much that is a case or not. Obviously, Fury's capable of hurting him. He's like a big 20-stone guy. But
Fury he's on the record saying he doesn't like fighting smaller guys. I don't think Usyk is small, but he's smaller. Fury's performances against southpaws have been objectively worse than against orthodox fighters. He's not. I think I did some analysis on it last week. He's not fought. I think he's fought around 35 or 40 rounds against southpaws. Now, he's never once scored a knockdown in those rounds, let alone knock someone out. So I think he's, of course it's heavyweight boxing. I've never thought Fury's a particularly big puncher either. He throws arm punches that are effective because he's so big. But I think I don't think he can knock Usyk out. Usyk's got a brilliant chin, hard to hit. And I don't think Fury's in the shape to do 12 rounds. And if he's coming in heavier, it might be 280 pounds, 275 pounds. I think he's even less like. So, I think Usyk wins inside the distance.
Yeah, well, that's the line that I've come down on now as well. Because, like you say, partly maybe I was believing the media hype or whatever for the first one. I genuinely believe Fury would be in the shape of his life for that first fight.
But do you not think he was though?
Well, I still don't think he was conditioning. He didn't look as slim as what I was hoping he was going to come in at the time.
Right. Okay.
It just seems to be. I mean, I know he's one of those people that naturally puts on weight, but he just can't. He just can't seem to get that really tip-top shape anymore. You know, and it's just like, there've been other fighters like that historically. I mean, you think about Larry Holmes, right? When he fought Mike Tyson, he was very fleshy. You wouldn't look at that guy and think this guy's, he's trained really hard for this fight. He's going to be able to last. And it's just that the more you look at Fury, the more you just think like, what sort of shape is he really going to come in at? And you're like, and you said, you're fighting someone who leaves no stone unturned in terms of his conditioning. You can't think that he's not going to have an off day. He's going to turn up. He's coming into this 100%.
The other imponderable, everyone talks about the adjustments that Fury might make, but I think no one's talking about the implications on the mindset of an undefeated, legacy-driven, ego-driven fighter like Fury having a defeat on his record. Like, it's the first time he's experienced it. He's got a defeat to someone he's ridiculed as a middleweight for 5 years. Like, as he goes to sleep at night, he's sitting on 50 million net worth or whatever it is, brilliant. But as he goes to sleep at night, I called that guy a little middleweight rabbit, and he knocked me around the ring for 3 minutes.
And he said, he said, didn't he? He said, if I lose to him, I'm not very good, am I?
Exactly.
He actually said that. So, and then now he keeps saying about this business about he always wins the wins a second fight convincingly. But you know,
it's just not it's not important data that, because it's how many times have you won a rematch with Usyk? If that's the data I'm interested in, not how many times have you beaten Wilder and who was the other guy, McDermott or whatever it was.
Yeah, just a journeyman.
Dora and these guys. Yeah. Okay, so what about? Do you have any boxing books or movies that stand out as a recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, I've read quite a few boxing autobiographies, but Nigel Benn's one is actually pretty frank. Doesn't really pull any punches. That's quite sort of straight down the line and honest. So that's worth seeking out if you want to read it. There's had another good book on about the Four Kings as well. I can't remember who wrote it now, but that's that's a pretty comprehensive sort of walk through the whole the whole four of Duran, Hearns, Hagler, and Sugar Ray Leonard. So they're the two that I actually read and thought, they're actually really good read. I've read a couple about Ali as well. I can't think of the names, but they're kind of like it's quite interesting actually hearing an honest portrayal of his private life. That he wasn't actually the saintly character that they sort of painted him as. Like he could be, he was obviously like a serial shagger. Probably give like Mike Tyson of the 80s a run in terms of what's going on. I think it's Bob Arum said that he was having girls brought into his hotels, on like more than one a day, shall you say.
Exactly. And that's not something that we're told about, and that's not the narrative around him.
The narrative is very much of the someone who contributed to sort of world peace and and stuff like that. So, but no one's perfect, are they?
Not at all. Yeah. So, what about? Final question is the best ring entrance you've seen, or the most exciting goosebump moment? And then, if you haven't got one of those, what would be your ring entrance music if you were a boxer?
Ring entrance music for me, I was like LL Cool J. Mama said, "Knock you out."
Classic.
I like that. I like that one.
It's just too obvious. No one does it. Why is that never used? Yeah.
It's too obvious, but it's pretty. If I was in the ring waiting for someone and that sort of cranked up, I think that'd be pretty intimidating. Yeah. So, what about you? Have you ever decided to flirt with the idea of is it white collar boxing?
No, I sparred one round, got hit in the face. I saw dots for a week, never did it again.
Yeah, I've actually got a mate who did something similar last year. He was scheduled to take part in a bout, and he was like, "Get it in the diary, come and see me how I get on in this white collar bout." And then he decided to go training in his local gym, and just said he just got beaten up.
Yeah,
and he said that it was so much harder than what you might think it is. You're just going to have a bit of a knockabout. It's brutal.
I trained with a guy who was probably 10 years older than me, and he was an ex-amateur and had an average to strong amateur record. Probably a couple of stone heavier than me, but like a good decade older than me. And we got in the ring, and he said, "Right, you can hit me however you like, whenever you like. I can touch." And first of all, I said, "I don't want to, because you're 10 years older than me. It's like Jake Paul, Mike Tyson, the age gap made. I don't want to inflict any damage on you." And he goes, "Trust me, you won't." And he eventually convinced me to try, and I couldn't land a glove on him in 3 minutes. And he was like mid 50s.
Yeah, goes to show.
You can't. It's definitely not for me.
And
then the next round, he said, "Right, I'm going to land a body shot on you. You can do what you can to avoid it." And he literally, at will, he landed when he wanted to. So. But no, I like to watch from the comfort of my armchair. Let them.
I agree. Yeah. So.
Cool.
All right. Good stuff, Dave. Good to talk to you.
You too, man. Really enjoyed that. And let's catch up again before the big fight and do some. See if we can find some value.
Solid analysis. Yeah.
Nice one.
Great.
Gary.
Cheers, Dave. See you later. Bye.